Freedom Coffee, because it's from Barcelona.
The independent coffee.
Independent coffee. The ridiculous nationalist coffee, I would say. But anyway.
Are you ready to do some iPad only talk?
Oh, for that, I'm always ready. Booyah, touchdown. I make miracles happen.
Hello, I'm Radek.
I'm Michael.
And this is the podcast.
A sounding board for interesting ideas and insights. We discuss books we read and want to share with you.
As well as technology and productivity, which is what we do by day working on our app, Nozbe.
Or whatever else comes to mind.
Alright, so as of now, it's been more than 3 months since I've got my new iPad Pro 10.5 inch with the pencil and the keyboard and all of that after you trying to convince me I should. And so I think it's finally time that we talk about this.
Yeah, by me trying to convince you that you should was more like you had to convince yourself and you were just envious of my iPad only life. But okay, I'll take it.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so
to be honest, you I don't think you did a very good job of selling it to me.
Well, we'll link in the show notes to the episodes. Let the listeners judge by themselves. Tell me, what about the iPad?
All right. So before I begin, like when we talked about this, I've already convinced myself that I should get it, but I was still skeptical. It's just I decided that I really want to find out for myself, and a lot of the arguments you've made now make sense to me, but at the time they didn't sound very convincing. To be honest.
Yeah. I remember, for example, the argument that iPad forced me to change lots of things that I work, and you were saying, yeah, you can do it also on the Mac. So why did it force you really?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and like the interesting thing to me is that I think we were both right. Like, it is an inferior computer in many ways. It still can't do a lot of things. It is ridiculous that because of its inferiority, I would have to change, like redo a lot of things to be simple enough to be able to do it at all. But it is better than I expected. It has unique capabilities that the Mac doesn't have. And it is true that its constraints or its inferiority, depending on how you look at it, did force me to simplify things, to automate, to design better kind of flows of doing certain tasks that I do on a computer, which is interesting because it made me a better iPhone and Mac user even if I threw it away. Like, even if I stopped using the iPad today, I would be better off because it was so annoying to do certain things that it was a trigger for me to automate and simplify.
Yeah, and and even to go kind of paperless, as I remember. So
true.
Like for me that was, as I mentioned, like my iPad only journey started years ago, and I remember that it forced me to go all cloud, to have everything in the cloud. And before that, I didn't need to. I wanted to, but I kind of didn't need to because I always have my computer with me. So why would I really do it? And then when I did, I was glad I did. And it was the same thing.
Yeah.
I would have thrown then the iPad away. I would just be a better Mac user already, thanks to the fact.
True.
So I totally agree where you're coming from, because even way back when, it just forced me to do something that otherwise I wouldn't do.
Yeah, which is really interesting because it is kind of a ridiculous reason to do it, but it is true that it did force me. And it's like, at the beginning, something that would take me, say, 2 minutes to do on the Mac would take me 5 minutes on the iPad. But after automating, it takes me 30 seconds on the iPad or the Mac.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Or actually, because of workflow, we will get back to that. But the workflow app is so good that I have many things kind of automated using that app in a way that I couldn't do, at least not very easily on a Mac. So there are some things that I can right now only do or most easily do on iOS.
I just, listening to this is music to my ears, because this is
I know.
exactly how I felt with the iPad, and especially when people were so skeptical about it and everything, that I had so many things optimized on the iPad that for certain tasks, I would consciously choose the iPad instead of the Mac. Having both at my disposal, I would just choose the iPad, because I knew that, because it's so focused, it's so concentrated. I have the workflow ironed out on the iPad, and it was before the workflow app. I mean, the way I was working, it was just more natural for me to just go to the iPad.
Yeah, and another thing, and again, it's something you told me, is because I forced myself to learn how to use the iPad efficiently, productively. I had to really learn iOS, like really learn.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I knew iOS, but I didn't really know iOS. And so because of that, I'm a better iPhone user, which is interesting because pretty much, like, there are few things that are possible on iPad that are not possible on the iPhone. So now pretty much, not only I can do pretty much all of my computing on the iPad, but because it's the same operating system, I can do pretty much all of my computing just very slowly on the iPhone, which is great because we just talked a couple of weeks ago about my trip to Panama. My iPhone was the only computer I had. And because I've already learned how to use many of the tools that I knew existed, but I didn't have it all set up, I didn't really have there was no circumstance where I'd be like, oh man, I wish I had a real computer on me because I can't do something. There was like, oh man, I wish I had a bigger computer because it would be faster, but not because it would be possible. Because anything that I needed to do computing wise, I could do on my iPhone.
Yeah, and this is again, this is the same thing. I mean, the fact that iOS is the same on the iPhone and iPad. I mean, no, it's not the same, but almost the same.
Yeah,
you are, as you said, becoming a better iPhone user, and you realize, just like, let me repeat it a different way. Whenever I leave home, if I don't take my iPad with me, I know I'm covered. I have my iPhone. So, as you said, I'm going to be a little bit slower, but I can do virtually anything on that thing. Yeah. So there is no anxiety of leaving something behind because you cannot, do something. I have the iPhone and I have the same things at my disposal, just a smaller screen, and that's it. And really, but the cool thing is, like, we've gone a long way.
Yeah.
Now the iPad with iOS 11 and with additional apps that we'll talk about today, it's just a totally different ball game. Like, it's just so much better. I mean, Michael Hyatt, my good friend, he whenever we were talking together and I was explaining to him that I'm using the iPad and everything, he was very skeptical about it. He was like, I have, Mac, and I don't need the iPad. And whenever he would blog about it, and just recently, we'll link to this in the show notes, he blogged that he's using iPad Pro almost as much as you are. And, he even mentioned me in the blog post that he's not 100% just like I am, but he's surprised how much more efficient he is with the iPad Pro.
Yeah, it's true. One time that really comes to my mind, a circumstance that really blown me away in terms of like how good it was to have an iPad, is a couple of weeks ago during my travel marathon. I was going between cities. I was going from Wrocław to Łódź on a train, right? Which I had a like really weird way because of the time of the day. So I had to take a train, go to Opole, in Opole change to another train, and then in Częstochowa I had switched to another train. So I was like in 3 different trains for some reason, which I didn't even realize I would have to do that. And the trip took 4 hours, or 3 hours and something. And for those 3 hours, I've done a lot of progress, a lot of productive work preparing for my Panama trip, right? And I had to, I was doing research, in Safari, like browsing stuff on different websites while discussing it with my friend, like side by side, while adding contacts to the contact book, saving documents as PDFs and annotating them and saving them offline to Dropbox, and adding notes to Google Keep, and adding points to an offline map in Google Maps, and just doing like buying stuff, doing transactions, just a lot of different apps, a lot of like difficult, complex things working together. And the thing about it is, it's not that I was impressed that I could do it. It's that it wasn't as good as doing it on a Mac. It was better. In that circumstance, it was better, because trying to use your Mac, a 15-inch MacBook Pro, while on a train is not a great experience, because it's very big. It's relatively heavy compared to the iPad. It's slippery on the back, so it wants to slip out of your legs. So you have to hold it in a certain way. I was on trains that didn't have a tray in front of me. I would have to have my MacBook on my laps, which is not great. And of course, the MacBook Pro doesn't have LTE. It should. I can't believe no Mac has an LTE, but it doesn't. Right? So I would have to tether to my iPhone. But when tethering, and if it wasn't bad enough that I'm on the train, if I'm tethering, the battery would die instantly. So I would have to connect the iPhone either to my Mac or to a battery for it to be viable. It would not be a great experience. Now on the iPad had all of the capabilities in terms of OS to do everything I had to do, and there was again a lot of different stuff with non-trivial stuff, and it's so small and so lightweight that it's not a problem to just hold it on my laps. I didn't have a problem that I didn't have a table or a tray, and the keyboard, the smart keyboard on the bottom, it's not slippery. It has a lot of friction. So holding it on your laps is actually very comfortable, because you can slightly move around and it just sits there. And it has its own LTE. And on this route, there was LTE for the whole 3 and something hours. So I could be very productive on a train in a way that's much better, and not worse, not acceptable, not as good, better than on a Mac. And that was super impressive.
Recently, I had to take a train ride to the capital, and to figure out some documents, some official documents, and then come back. I did all in one day, and I was so productive on the train that I thought I'm going to be doing regular, travels just for the sake of it, just to, as a cafe, just to change the atmosphere, because I went there and I was so productive. Just put out the iPad and you have the connection, and it's just, you can work instantly. There is no interruptions. You're just there, focused. It's fantastic. I did more work than I would normally do in my home office, almost. So it was, it's totally a different ballgame. And as you said, this is magic. The fact that the iPad with LTE, which is the only option you should get. I mean, don't buy an iPad which doesn't have cellular connection. This way, it's like iPhone. You take it out, you're online. You're on the line, really. There is no way to connect or whatever, or dial a modem or something. No, you're online every freaking time. So this is magic, and I get why you appreciate that.
Yeah, and again, because it's so small and so light, the fact that I had to switch trains twice, it would be super annoying if I had my MacBook Pro, because I had to disconnect this, fold it together, put it in my backpack, and this is oh, okay, I have to I arrived in Nepal, I just fold the keyboard cover, I switch trains, I sit down while holding my iPad in my hand, unfold it, and I go, right? It wasn't a big deal. I've wasted no time. I didn't care.
No, the thing with the smart cover, it's brilliant.
Yes.
It's really a brilliant piece of technology. When they announced it, I was laughing at them. I thought it was stupid. I thought it was ridiculous, and it added an additional bump. And I was like, this is stupid. But I've been using lots of Logitech externally Bluetooth keyboard over my iPad only Live, and so I really judged it by its cover. But then when I went to the Apple Store and started using it, I was like, oh no, this is so good, because it just adds a little bit bump to the cover that you already have. And I always have a cover on my my iPad, but that's all I have, just the cover, nothing else. So it just makes the cover a little bit thicker, but only a little bit. So it's still a lightweight iPad. It doesn't add bulk to the iPad. And then when you flip it, it connects instantly, nothing to charge. We already discussed it in the previous episodes about inductive charging, that we have already too many things to charge. This one, you don't have to charge it. It connects instantly. It works, and it's just and it works even on your lap, which is very good. So this, the smart cover, it's brilliant. I love it.
So actually, I was very surprised myself at how good the smart keyboard is. I didn't expect it to be very good, because it's not a real keyboard, right? It doesn't have real switches. It's so thin, like it cannot possibly be good. And it's good. It's not as good. It's not as comfortable as typing on the Microsoft's called ergonomic keyboard, of course. But I don't have a problem with it. It's fine, and it's always there. And that's just so amazing. Like it takes no effort, no preparation, no charging, no nothing. It just works, and it's always there. And having both the keyboard and the keyboard shortcuts and the touch, the multi-touch, is just great. The only real thing that's annoying about this keyboard is it doesn't have an escape key, which is kind of stupid, because in the corner there isn't a useful key anyway. It's some BS key that no one uses anyway.
Exactly.
And in theory, apps are supposed to map escape to command dot, but in practice, most apps don't do that. So it rarely actually works. So that's the only annoying thing.
Yeah, I mean, the key in the corner, it's ridiculous. Nobody uses the key anyway, so I don't know why they would put it and not map something else. I mean, these things somewhere else and just put the escape key here. I have no clue what was behind this design decision. Also, the keyboard should have more of the iOS shortcuts, kind of iOS. So we could use it like more iOS-y, because for example the Logitech keyboards, they are more iOS-y. They have like useful shortcuts, home screen, I mean home and stuff. They have it's useful.
Yeah. In general, I wish that there was more keyboard shortcuts. I don't think they still take the keyboard very seriously. They could have added a lot more shortcuts to apps and to iOS itself, like global shortcuts. But we'll get to that in a moment. One other annoying thing about the keyboard is you can't press and hold the key to select on the screen one of the variants. Like if you want to do like say an N with the thing at the top, whatever it's called, right? Like you can do that. If you want to do that and you don't have it on your behind Alt for your keyboard layout, you have to hold and press the button in the bottom right corner of the screen to unfold the screen keyboard. That's kind of silly. But anyway, continuing with the good things about the iPad, the hardware is pretty amazing. The screen is like the best one I've seen, period. It's 120 FPS. It has the True Tone thing. It's just great. Could be even better, right? But it's already great. It's fast. It's really fast for what it is, for how thin and light it is. It's super fast. In JavaScript benchmarks, for like as an example, for I forgot its name, but the popular JavaScript benchmark. So something kind of more concrete than some basic CPU benchmark, something kind of more comparable in theory. It's as fast as the MacBook One, right?
Wow. Mm-hmm.
That's amazing. The pencil is awesome. We've talked about it. I've gotten rid of all of my paper notebooks, all of my paper journals, all of that because of the pencil, right? I take handwritten notes during meetings and sometimes sketching or designing some little element. And it's just great with the 120 FPS screen and the low latency on the pencil itself. It just works so great.
Okay, let me just pause here, because when I got the iPad and when the application Paper 53 was announced, I started drawing again on the iPad. And for me, this was so much fun. I'm not very good at drawing, but I just like it. I enjoy it. So and with the simple tool set that Paper 53 offered, I was again enjoying drawing. You know, it was fun. It was great. But then later I stopped drawing so much. Even with the pencil, I preferred the notepad. I mean the notes app for that, because with the pencil it just works best. So I was using that. And you told me about this application called Linea that you use for sketching and drawing, and I was like, yeah, whatever. I mean the notes app is fine. But then last week on our reunion, you showed me how this application works. And really, I was note-taking then for the rest of the Nozbe reunion in Linea. And it was so much fun. It was so great. I got back this joy of drawing and making handwritten notes and then drawing something around it or next to it. The fact that it has layers, it has the tools that I need, the layers. It's just fun. I love it.
Yeah. It's really good. It's just I was surprised at how much I would like the pencil. Of course, it's an expensive accessory, but it's great for what it is. It's great. Again, LTE is just it makes things so much easier. It makes you use this machine so much more of the time, because in theory, tethering to your iPhone is not a big deal. In practice, it's really annoying.
Yeah.
Right? I can't believe they don't have that on the Mac. They must be working on it. They must have. I don't know. They probably don't have a good reason, but I hope they'll get to that point, because the iPad here gets just such a great advantage, which is an unfair advantage, right? Because it's not related to the iPad, but it's great. And I mentioned to you about the train trip, but actually, like, the fact that it's so small makes me carry it around and just have it on me in situations I'd never have my Mac on me, right? So in situations where I'd only have my iPhone and I would not be able to be productive in any way, I got this like really small shoulder bag, which is just big enough for the iPad and something, right? And there are many times where I just take it with me, even if I'm not sure if I'm going to need it. And then like I'll just walk around in the city, take care of some errands, and maybe I have to wait for something, or I just feel like, oh, maybe I'll stop by the cafe and sit down for 2 hours, and I just pull out my iPad and I can do some work, right? And it enables more situations where I can be productive that I wouldn't be able to do before, or that would be kind of annoying before, and now it's not it's no problem, right? So it kind of unlocks certain lifestyle possibilities. Might be a bit too much, but you know, another example would be me, you know, going away to another city for a weekend or something, right? I wouldn't want to take my Mac with me, because like with the case, with the charger, with all of the adapters, it's just so big, so annoying to carry around, so heavy. Even the newest generation, it's still heavy and annoying. And this I can just I don't know, I'll just throw it in and to my backpack and it's fine, right? And I might use it, I might not, but if I don't, it doesn't feel like I shouldn't have taken all this bulk, because it's just not a big deal, right? So that's great. That's one of the kind of unique capabilities, because in most cases I've been surprised that the iPad is good enough, that it's almost as good or as good, but there are certain things that are obvious, that are just unique to the iPad. LTE for now, the pencil, and the size and the weight, and it just enables new things. And Another thing that I was sort of surprised about is how good the window management, of course they don't want you to call that, on iOS 11 is. There are a few situations where the split view, either half and half or 1/3, 2/3, plus the slide over would not be enough, where I would feel like, I wish I had kind of more space and more windows. There are workflows where that might be possible, where I'd be like, that would be so much easier to do on the Mac. But like 99% of the time, not 99% of the time, this is more than good enough, right? And it's so much simpler because there's no overlapping windows, right? It's quite great. And also pointing with your finger is actually really nice. Like it's faster. It's a faster, more natural, and more precise mode of interacting than I thought. Like obviously, like the mouse is great because even on a very large screen, it's very fast and very precise. But on a small device like the iPad Pro 10.5 inch, when you have like your hands on the keyboard much of the time, either typing or using keyboard shortcuts, like the distance to any point on the screen is so small that I was positively surprised that I don't feel like it slows me down to have to use my big fat finger to like point at some point on the screen. Big fat finger compared to the cursor, of a mouse. That it's just fine, and it feels good. It feels really nice. I remember being on the conference in Wrocław a couple of weeks ago, and I had to do something on my Mac. So I was working on my iPad like for the last 2 days. I put it away for a second. I took my MacBook Pro from the backpack. I started typing something on the keyboard, and then I tried to switch to another tab in Safari by tapping it on the screen. And then I realized how ridiculous it is. And I'm just like, did no one see that? Because I was just being stupid. And it's like, it becomes so natural so quickly.
So 2 things. First of all, I would have loved to record this episode and play it for you like half a year ago. You would tell me it was fake. You would tell me this is fake news. This is fake thing. I mean, there's no way in this life that I'm saying these things. There's no way.
I would think that. That's true.
You wouldn't believe what you just said. So like, no way.
I would not believe you. I did not believe you. I had to check it out for myself.
So that's the first thing, playing this to the Radek half a year ago. This would have been a blast. Second thing, I remember back in the day, I'm a dinosaur. So back in the day when I had a Windows computer, and there was this thing of tablet PCs. And there was a special version of Windows XP Tablet PC Edition. And because I was on the cutting edge, because I am me, I had 2 tablet PCs at home, one for my wife and one for me. One was the Toshiba M200, which had a very big screen, 13-inch but very high resolution, big screen with a Wacom touch. I mean, with a Wacom special stylus. So you wouldn't be able to touch the things. You had to use the stylus to interact with the content of the screen. And then we had the small one, a Fujitsu P1000, something like that, which was also a tablet PC edition, but it was touch enabled. So there was it's capacitive touch or something like that. So it was touch enabled, but it was very small. It had a very small screen. My wife was using it for some work. I loved it, but it was really small for me. But I remember once my Toshiba broke. I had to give it to repairs, and then I had to work using this small computer with touch. For next, I think 3 or 4 days, and while I was waiting for my Toshiba, or even a week when my Toshiba was getting fixed, and I remember how much fun it was, as you said, to have the keys and just quickly tap something on the screen and just keep typing, and tap something on the screen and keep typing, because the screen was small. It was responding to my fingers, not to a stylus. So it was just so much fun to work. I remember that day, and it was 2006 or 2005 actually. So it was 12 years ago. But I remember that. I remember that day that I was like, whoa, with this computer, it's so much fun. I mean, okay, the screen is smaller. I cannot do so much work, but it's so much fun, like typing and pushing on the screen and then typing more. And now I have that with my iPad. So but I remember that back in the day.
Wow. This is a long time ago. Right. I think I'm ready for the bad part.
Okay.
The things that annoy me. First of all, obviously bugs. A lot of bugs. And a lot of bugs that are related to the fact that it's an iPad Pro with a keyboard, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like it's clear that it's not yet as important to them, that you don't take it as seriously as the iPhone, right?
Yeah.
And even basic things like Command Tab for switching between apps. When you have the smart keyboard, it's just like it's so powerful that it has those keyboard shortcuts, and like moving between apps with Command Tab is very fast. But then some of the apps when you use split screen disappear from the switcher. It's so annoying, right? Because it's so basic, so fundamental to using the iPad quickly. Broken. So many bugs related to external keyboard support, for example, and even in Nozbe.
Also, when they introduced the gestures, like for 3 fingers and stuff like that, I would never use that because it was so slow and it was so unreliable that I would just, I would never use it. I would prefer to go to home and choose a different app than just switch like this. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. It's annoying when you can see apps that have kind of artificially limited capabilities. Apps that have no fundamental reason why they wouldn't support certain features that you can do on the website or on the Mac client, but they just don't have it. Until recently, you couldn't, as far as I can say, as far as I can tell, or I asked you to check it out, create folders very easily in a Dropbox app. How ridiculous is that, right? And I see that a lot. Like we started using Dropbox Paper a lot, and the app is, for the most part, more convenient to use than the website, but it doesn't have half the features. Annoying.
Yeah.
And there's no good reason for that. They haven't cared or whatever to build it yet, right? There are a few things that for now are
okay. Just before you move on, and some apps, they're like some apps, I call them trolls. They are trolling you. They have iPad support. They are on the iPad, but they're constantly trolling you. Like for example, the Google apps, they are trolling you like crazy. Like the Gmail app, it still doesn't support split screen. It doesn't support any kind of interaction. This app is constantly being updated. So it's not like they don't work on it, but they don't care about that. They don't care about supporting something like as simple as split screen. I mean, this is so obvious. You have email on one side, something else on the other. This is like the basic thing ever. And no. Yeah. Gmail, sorry, Vinetu, no, but I think it's Google trolling Apple, and that's all they do. I mean, and I hate this.
Yeah, same. I think only like in the last few weeks, the YouTube app is now split screen enabled. Of course, you can't still do what would make more sense, which is the picture-in-picture, unless you pay $10 a month, but that's another thing already.
Well, I don't have the YouTube app on my iPad. As you know, I have a special workflow. I'll link to it in the show notes that I just use to browse the YouTube videos in picture-in-picture. But of course, it doesn't work with all the YouTube videos, so it's not 100% reliable.
Yeah. Another thing is some websites suck, like complex web apps built as websites.
Oh, yeah.
Like my bank or Squarespace. Are just pretty terrible to the point, or Confluence, of course, are ranging from being extremely annoying to use to being virtually unusable, which is sad because it's not a technical limitation. It's just that they don't care. They haven't spent time to make it work in the most basic way. Like I can understand. Okay. Building something, like rebuilding something this complex from scratch for iOS, for iPad, it's a big thing. You might not have the resources to do it, but it would take, like 3% more effort to make this website work decently on the iPad. Maybe not great, but decent. Just fixing like hover gestures and stuff like that so that it's usable.
But these are big companies. They have the resources. They don't care about it. And for me, this is like very annoying. I mean, this was one of the reasons why we switched from Confluence to Dropbox Paper, because the Confluence would just suck so much on the iPad that it was just beyond belief, and I just couldn't, resist, just going away from it.
Yeah. So, for example, one thing that I cannot do 100% is publish an episode of the podcast from my iPad. I can do most of the things. Slightly slower than on my Mac, but I can do most of the things. But then the last step is adding a link to the table of contents, the podcast.fm/TOC. And if I try to edit one of the text blocks from Safari, it scrolls to the top.
Oh.
And I cannot possibly scroll, keep the scroll position so that I can insert text into one of the blocks below the top one.
So this is Squarespace screwing up.
Yeah, this is Squarespace screwing up. And Squarespace has not one, but a few different iPad apps for the blog, for the pages, and they're all terrible. They're all extremely limited and not very well done, and they don't support split screen, and they don't support the full screen size of the iPad Pro 10.5 inch.
So there you go. This podcast is not sponsored by Squarespace because we don't endorse how they don't support the iPad.
Yeah. Fix your shit, Squarespace, and then come sponsor us.
Exactly.
Because otherwise, it's great, right? If only.
Yeah.
And so there's that, and those are not fundamental flaws of the iPad. It's just, iPad working well with the external world. A few things that are annoying for me are things that are for now limitations of iOS, but need not be in the future. For example, one feature that's really great on the Mac is you can have things that are triggered from a global shortcut, like quick cut on in Nozbe, right? Mm-hmm. You have an idea pop into your head, you hit Control Command T. You start typing, you press return, and it's added to Nozbe without bringing up the Nozbe app, right? You can be anywhere on your Mac and just do it, and off it goes. But of course, you cannot assign global actions throughout the whole system on iOS. Maybe one day there will be some system of doing that. For now, no way. One thing I do want to do in Nozbe 3.7 is to add a quick add, just this phrase, quick add item to index it using Spotlight, so that you can press Command Space, bring at Spotlight, press type quick add, press enter, and it will open Nozbe in the quick add window, and then you Command tab to the previous app. Not quite as good, but as close as we can get.
Yeah, you can also do have the widget, the Nozbe widget there. So this one, when you tap on the Nozbe widget, you can still add stuff. So
yeah. But it's a kind of thing that it's great to be able to do it fully from the keyboard. Yeah. Because it's just the fastest, right? If you're already in front of your iPad, it's different from the iPhone where the widget or the 3D touch shortcut works really well. Another similar thing is on the Mac, a feature which is of course a pro feature, but can be super useful when you need it, is you can add additional shortcuts, keyword shortcuts to menu items in any app globally. So for example, one thing that I used to do a lot in my Magic spreadsheet in numbers is merge cells. And there wasn't a keyboard shortcut for that, so I added it. And when you do that a lot, it's great to be able to just do one keystroke and it's there. You can't do that on the iPad. If it doesn't have a keyboard shortcut, and very few things have keyboard shortcuts in iPad apps, you can't add it. Maybe one day. I don't see a reason why it wouldn't be possible in theory. And one thing which is, again, super geeky, but for me quite important is... on my Mac, I have a modified keyboard layout where I have additional kind of symbols added, as shortcuts on. So you can do that on the Mac and just add it to the system and use it. You can't do that on iPad. Again, maybe one day. On iPad, it's not very easy to add to the system extra fonts, for example. But there is a way to do it. It's slightly annoying, but there is a kind of general system to add additional things, like additional fonts or additional, in theory, keyboard layouts to the system. So maybe one day. But those are like very specific to me. I think the thing that is most concerning to me right now is I fear that because I can do so much on the iPad, but I can't do like my most important work, which is programming. Like this is what I do on my Mac, and I fear that because I enjoy using the iPad so much, and I have it on me so many times. It's sort of like using it encourages me to do unproductive work, like shallow work, like all of the things around my most important work. Some of it is unavoidable, and I enjoy doing that stuff on the iPad as much, if not more, than on the Mac.
At least it's more fun actually than doing it on the Mac. Yeah, it's less of a chore.
It actually is, especially if you just like take it and like switch places, go to a cafe or something, where again it will be annoying to do with a Mac, and with iPad it's fine. But it's just the fact that it's fun might. I fear that it sort of pulls me away from my most important deep work, which I cannot do on the iPad. Yeah,
that's true. I mean, speaking of that, what I really like right now with this is not only the iOS 11, which is really so much better for the iPad, is also the new apps. So, for example, recently I started, I started being involved a little bit more with the code, but not code of our app, but more of the code that we have a new website coming in. The new Nozbe website is based on a repository in the code, and then just today we've been doing some marketing stuff and some marketing scripts with Tom, and for that I can use Git on the iPad true. Directly with the app called Working Copy, and this is fantastic. I mean, I just today when we started discussing, I was like, okay, so which repo is that? Okay, I just cloned the repo. I had access to the files. It was just so effortless. It was just there, and it's no problem. So so that is really cool, and of course the app workflow. I mean. The app workflow was purchased by Apple. We discussed this, and let's see what they do in iOS 12. Maybe some kind of built-in workflows, whatever. We don't know that, but we hope so, because whenever I showcase workflow to anyone, and we did it on Nozbe Reunion where you showcased the automatization of your stuff to the rest of the team, people are blown away. Their jaws literally dropped. Just today in the morning, I had a breakfast with a bunch of friends, and I showed them my journaling workflow, and they were like, "Whoa, OMG, I want that!" And most of them are on Android phones. That's why I had to ask you which kind of app they can more or less try to use with Android. And
we'll put the links to that in the show notes. It's Automator and Automate and Tasker.
Exactly. So that, and another thing was just a few days ago, my wife was leaving because she's studying for an exam, and she told me, Michael, I have this problem here that in this circumstance, I cannot kind of make the PDF from the file on my iPad. Can I? And I checked, and really in this kind of situation where she was at, in the share extension, there was no way to create the PDF, right? Yeah. So what I did, I created a workflow for her to create a PDF out of anything. Yeah. And it was, a few seconds, just got the workflow app, created this workflow, and tested it, worked perfectly. And my wife, preparing for her exam, she's preparing for her exam on an iPad mini. And she has everything, all the notes, everything in Scrivener, the application for writers, but she uses it as a note-taking app for all the notes that she has. She has all the PDFs, all the documents that she needs, all the resources also in this app as PDFs attached to Scrivener. And just recently she discovered that she can edit the PDFs when she puts them in the iCloud Drive, so in the Files app, and she can annotate on them. So she's using that as well. So she's completely iPad only with iPad mini. Without a keyboard. And so for her, and for her, the iPad mini is so cool because she can put it into any purse. Any purse she takes has the iPad mini on her. She can study anywhere she wants. So, and she doesn't have to carry all the studying material, papers, and all this stuff. Recently, over the last months, I've seen her and you like transforming into iPad only people and having fun in the process and enjoying the process so much. And I'm happy about it. I'm not an iPad salesperson. I'm just an iPad fan. So I love it. But I see people discovering it, and I'm like, yeah, it's not just me being crazy. This actually works for people.
Yeah, and it works better with every year. When you started, you were crazy. But right now, with the capabilities that we have with the hardware and the software, it becomes viable, which I think comes back to why I wanted to try this. I had a thought that, you know what, like with this new iPad Pro and with iOS 11, maybe we really are at this point where this is powerful enough to be the only computer that a lot of people will have. And so I wanted to get the iPad and go all in with the keyboard, the pencil, the LTE, because I wanted to verify that hypothesis, that it's good enough for most people for everything that they do. And I think the answer is yes. Like, I can't use the iPad for everything. I'm a programmer, but that's a very specific thing. There's a lot of people which will need, maybe at home, maybe only at work, a computer, a quote-unquote real computer for maybe design work, for maybe video producing, for maybe some very specific things, or just because they need a large screen. But we'll get to the point in the future where you'll be able to have some way of using a large screen with iOS devices, I'm sure, but we're not there yet. But I feel like for most people, maybe as their personal computer, not their work computer that the company provides them, but